Harriet Cady, in favor, wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am a former member of the House and a former member of the Election Committee. In 2002 through 2006, when we did the redistricting from the 2000 census, we heard these same complaints about voter ID then as you are hearing now. I was also a supervisor of the checklist and have assisted the supervisors of the checklist since then, most recently in the elections in Deerfield, New Hampshire, where I reside and have resided for 28 years. The sworn affidavit was provided in the, just before the 2000, so just the election before that, by 22 AmeriCorps volunteers to the Deerfield supervisors of the checklist at 10 minutes of 7 at night. Being a supervisor of the checklist, I said to them, how can you say Bear Brook State Park is your address? Bear Brook State Park is not an address. Well, we're doing work there as AmeriCorps volunteers. And because the section of Bear Brook State Park they were in is in Deerfield, we had to register them upon them signing the affidavit. Shortly thereafter, we purged the checklist and I sent letters to every one of these people. And guess what? The letters came back saying no such person at this address. So the letters went to, obviously, where they had previously been registered to say, take them off your checklist, we now have them on ours. Shortly thereafter, we purged our checklist and notified the same people again that we were purging the checklist because this had come back, and the letters never were accepted by whatever their addresses were in Bear Brook State Park. So I can tell you we carried 22 registered voters for about 3 years, maybe 4, and the cost to the town of Deerfield was the meeting of the supervisors to go through the checklist and the mailing of 3 letters. So there is a cost to people who register and are not residents of your town. That's the sworn affidavit, by the way. Secondly, a picture is not something that is discriminatory. How can I say that? Well, if you want a driver's license, you have to have your picture taken. If you don't want your picture taken, you don't want a driver's license. The same would hold true. If you're going to vote, you have your picture taken. You choose. You are free to vote or not vote. A picture is one more requirement to your ID system that is in place all over this country. Recently in Deerfield, working with the supervisors, because of my knowledge of the system, they put me on changing voters back to independent. And we had one lady come from going to the checklist and asking to vote, and she was a registered Republican, and she insisted she never would have been a part of that party. So we called the Secretary of State's office for backup to what her previous registration had been. And when confronted with the Secretary of State's records, which are now the backup records to the town, that she had in fact voted as a Republican in the town of Epsom and had not changed back to independent. Therefore, she could only have a Republican ballot in this election, but could change back. And we explained all the process for changing back. The third point I would make is, as a supervisor of the checklist, checklist, an interesting thing happened in the schools when they want to get students registered. Professors or teachers will say you're 18 and now you're eligible to register to vote, and we'd like you to take your responsibilities as a citizen. So the city of Concord, which accepts the tuition students from Deerfield, took it upon themselves to bring in the supervisors of the checklist and register the students, high school students that were 18 in Concord. The kids came to vote, and unfortunately, they were registered in Concord even though they lived in Deerfield. Even though the cards in Concord showed they lived in Deerfield and had filled them out correctly, they were registered in Concord. So we, the supervisors of Deerfield, had them sign the domicile affidavit and registered them in Deerfield. Luckily, Deerfield's a pretty small town, and you recognize most of the people if you've lived there for any length of time. And so they were registered and were allowed to vote in Deerfield. But I would say the process isn't always perfect out there.
Thank you, Harriet. Appreciate that. And would you believe I was standing outside the polling place when that van with those kids from Bearbrook State Park drove up?
Did you really think they were Deerfield residents?
Matter of fact, I walked in and I asked the moderator what was going on.
Well, we were forced to register them
I
per
understand.
the law.
That's what he told me. Anyone on the committee, do you have a hand up, something? No? You're all set. Harriet, thanks for coming over.
Thank you.
Thank
Crop TV.